John, I want to move into some offense and some defense talk. All right. We are post NFL draft for 30 minutes in here on this Tuesday edition of Birds 365. It's time to talk about the offense. We just brought up the passing. Now we're going to talk about the offense a little bit. The first person I want to talk to you about, who I think is maybe one of the more concerning parts of this team coming into the 2025 season, is Kevin Patulo. All right. He's your new offensive coordinator. Now, he's been here since Nick Sirianni's been here. So he has overseen the offense for a while, or at least been a part of it for a while. I think that's a good thing. What are your expectations for the offense coming into the 2025 season?
Similar to last season. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. As long as Saquon is here and healthy, and playing at the level he's playing at, I think they're going to ride that until as long as humanly possible. And then when that ends, you got to shift because you're probably not going to find a replacement to bring that type of game-changing ability onto the offense from the backfield. So, we just talked about the fullback. As long as Saquon is here, they're going to ride him. Kept asked that probably between all the reporters that are there daily. We probably asked that 100 times. Like, are you worried about touches? Are you worried about this? Or he's never touched the ball this much. The history when you touch the ball this much. And every single time Nick Sirianni would answer it the same, which is, we manage him during the week. Right. If he's got to run it 40 times to win a game, we're going to run him 40 times. They've made that decision,
which I think is a good approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. It won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you're right to speculate. At what point does the rubber meet the road, or does that die off a little bit?
Well, no, it's going to meet the road. I mean, he's a human being eventually.
Right. That's why I'm asking, at what point does it happen? Is it this season? Is it next season? And but the other thing I think that factors in this year, John, is the NFL changes year to year. Just like we talk about, Jaden Daniels, defenses are going to be more prepared for him. Well, I think coming into this year, even if Jalen and the offense showed that they were capable of winning when you took away Saquon, look to Pittsburgh, look to the Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, I think defensive coordinators are going to do their very best to take away Saquon Barkley next year. And I don't think he's going to get 2,000 yards again. Now, I think he's going to have a great season because he's a great football player. But at what point or how far back do you think that will fall? Or maybe not at all?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it's very unlikely he's going to rush for 2,500 yards through the Super Bowl again. And teams are going to be more hyper focused. Like what's funny, I say it all the time. People call it a copycat league, and it is, but it's a very slow moving copycat league. And I think people came into this season, this past season, still thinking more about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and the passing game than they did the running game. And it amped up as it went on. People were unsuccessful for the most part. Ironically, maybe the most successful team was the Super Bowl. And then the passing game did show up. So everything worked out. But I do think you're going to see more of a hyper focus. I think the Rams are the highlight of that. Because when you look back at it, the Rams were the team that gave the Eagles by far their most toughest test in the playoffs. And they had this great pass rush, but they were tremendously undersized. They had the worst middle linebacker in the history of football. I don't even know what they were trying to do with Christian Roseboom. And they came close, but ultimately weren't able to get it done against the Eagles. And now you look at their offseason, all of a sudden, obviously, they moved on from Roseboom. I don't even know where he went, but they bring in Poona Ford instead of having that. Last year it was Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner, who are both great players. but really, really undersized and really, really good pass rushers, but can't stop the run. Now all of a sudden you got this big, all he does is stop the run, Poona Ford.
I happen to be a Poona Ford fan. Poona Ford.
Yeah, well, he's very good at his job. And then they bring in, not that it's, Chris Paul Jr., not that it's, an inside linebacker, but I don't know that much about Chris Paul Jr. as a prospect. Maybe we can ask Devin about him, but I guarantee he's better than Christian Roseman. And they also brought in Nate Landman, who's a bigger linebacker. Again, not splashy names, but you can see the process of what they're thinking. Like, all right, we gotta get a little bit better stopping the run. And just the presence of Ford will probably do that to a certain extent, if he stays healthy. But because that's a player, it's very difficult to have a backup for, obviously, similar to here with Jordan Davis. So I think you're going to see that. And even Washington, their mentality was, all right, we got to get better to stop the run. In the division, you're going to see the New York Giants. You can say all you want about the New York Giants, and nobody makes fun of the New York Giants more than me. But their bucket defensive line is good.
It is. It's stacked.
It is good and talented. And then the Cowboys are the Cowboys, always getting in their way. But you can see it in the division as well. So yeah, people are going to be more focused on stopping the Eagles' run game, and then hopefully you start leaving AJ Brown one-on-one, you're in trouble. So that's
Right.
what the Eagles have done. They've
That's
built
what it
up
comes
this.
down to, I think, this year. Because there are people in the chat, oh, what do you mean they're going to take away Saquon? They're not going to take away Saquon. I'm like, well, there's more tape on him now. Saquon wasn't with the Eagles until last year. So defensive coordinators study that. Spags did put out a little bit of a blueprint on stopping Saquon, maybe not the rest of the team, but it's going to come down to the offense and the passing game this year, right? To take advantage of that when they do take away Saquon. If they can pass the ball effectively, then I think teams are screwed.
Yeah, that's what happened in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Nobody did a better job taking Saquon away than the Chiefs. And, but to do it, they had to leave HA open on the outside and Devontae open on the outside. And you saw the results of that. One-on-one on the outside. So, and that's what the Eagles have done. They've built up this tremendously talented offense. And that's when you see them struggle in the regular season, as they did too often last year. You're like, what's going on? What's wrong? What's the problem? And again, if they lose that game against the Rams, all we're talking about this offseason is how bad the passing game was. I believe 65 net yards in that game. Now, you put the snow and all that stuff. I don't care. They had so many games during the season where the passing game was ineffective. And
Well, you could also point to the Rams in that game. The Rams played on the same field. They threw it like 350 passing yards, didn't they?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I don't know how much it was, but it was far more significant than the Eagles. Yes.
I'll get the number.
And they're a dome team. That SoFi is, part dome, part not dome. But
Stafford had 324 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, and they're, he played his entire career, and obviously at Ford Field. And you have the warm weather team coming in, and they were a Jaylen Carter pass rush away from probably losing that game, because the receiver, the Higbee behind, was wide open because the slipping coverage, and probably would have walked in if Jaylen Carter didn't make the pass rush. And if that happens, and that's just part of football. I'm not saying you can do that in almost any one-score game. You can point to a play. That's not the point. That's not why I'm doing it. The point is, all the people who say it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, don't worry about it, don't worry, are incensed all off season because they're upset in the divisional round against a lesser team because they couldn't pass the ball at all. Incensed to the point that's all we would be talking about the entire offseason. And now we're not talking about it at all, which is kind of weird. But, it's easier to put your head in the sand than say, hey, you know what? And then, by the way, that's not the Eagles. They know they need to get more consistent, better, and they will try.
Well, we're talking about it now. Then what do you think the passing game is gonna have to be this year? They were 29th in the league last year, but I don't really say that in a negative way because you got a running back with 2,500 freaking yards. Obviously, you didn't have to pass that much. Nobody could stop Saquon Barkley. But if that does change or it does shift a little bit, then what do you think what do you think the goal is for the offense this year from a passing perspective? Or do they not worried about where they're rated and they're more worried about the success of the overall offense?
I don't think they're worried about where they're rated. I think they're worried about the efficacy, the efficiency of the passing game.
But wasn't it pretty efficient last year? Like, I know it wasn't a lot, but when they did need to do it.
In games, yes. In the Super Bowl, it was tremendously efficient. In Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh, it was tremendously efficient. Yeah. Then there was the Rams game. Then there was the Carolina game. There was a whole host of games where it was far from efficient.
Right. So there was a little bit of both. You got a sample size of both.
Yeah. So, when it's fine, if people forget the bad stuff. Like, if that bad stuff turned into season-ending bad stuff and it was this close, that's why I bring it up. It was one play. It was literally one play. If Jaylen Carter does not make that play, and I said it to him in the locker room, I go, dude, you realize you saved this season. And, Jaylen is tremendously modest for his talent level. And he was like sheepish about it, but that's the reality. He saved the season.
He got a badass tattoo that I saw you was posted up. Did you see that?
Yeah, well, I'm a little concerned by that. If what not the tattoo, but he was put under to get the tattoo. I read.
I don't know. I don't know if that was true or not because
I'm saying I don't know if that's true. If that's true, yeah, I'm not. I would not be happy with that if I'm the Eagles. But I don't give a shit about the tattoos. But
why wouldn't you be happy with that? Just
it's dangerous. Who's doing that? First of all, I don't even believe it. I shouldn't have brought it.
I don't either. I saw that tweet and I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, he certainly wasn't put under in the video that they posted.
It's not like they're bringing in a licensed anesthesiologist to the tattoo shop. That's what I'm saying. I hear you. I'm saying so. I
don't think he went under though. I did see the tweet that you saw though that said he went under. I don't think that's true though. I don't know where they got that.
I hope it's not true. That's what I'm saying. I hope that part of it's not true.
Anybody in the chat have a bunch of tattoos? Did you even think about going under? I don't think that's a thing.
I can't even imagine how do you put somebody under at a tattoo shop? If that shit's going on, please let me know. Because
I don't know. Well, Prince says a lot of people are dying from that shit. Prince, I'm not sure if you're a tattoo guy or not, but a lot. This JV
because I would not. If that's the case, I'm just saying, if that's the case, I would not be happy if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't imagine it's the case. Like I can't. What is some whack job just putting you under? What I hope that's not the case. But anyway,
people are saying when you get big, he did get a big. It was across his whole chest. So.
Like who's doing it though?
I don't know. I'm with you. That sounds sketchy. The tattoo shop is putting them
incredibly sketchy. Like you always hear about those women who try to get butt implants and from Puerto Rico, and they're down at the airport hotel. There's a legitimate story. And die.
We got BBL mentions on the show today. We're off the rails already.
Well, I just mean if I'm the Eagles and I don't know about that, I'm fucking pissed off about that.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's all I'm saying. I hope it's not true. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm with that. I mean,
As
Daz
far
is
as the
right here, though.
tattoos, yeah, I don't get it, but I don't give a shit. If you want tattoos, go get tattoos.
Back to the original point, though. You were talking about how you mentioned that to him in the locker room. I brought up the tattoos just because I saw it on my feed yesterday.
Yeah, well, yeah, so did I. And I went, no way is he going under. And if he is, again, somebody needs to explain that to me. But as far as saving the season, yeah, because I've thought it like nobody wants to talk about it, and I get it from a fan base perspective. They don't want to talk about negative things, blah blah blah.
Well, like you said, though, I do think there's like a level of, well, that can happen in any game. I mean, the margin for error in football games is not particularly big. So there could be,
No,
I
but
think,
but I'm not talking about the play. I'm talking about the mentality of the fan base changes if that play goes in a negative direction. Yes, it
well, of
happened.
course, the result would dictate that for sure.
But I'm just saying that's how close it was to everybody complaining about the passing game. Now they're pretending that there were no issues because ultimately they went on and performed. There's recency bias. They were tremendous against Washington, tremendous against Kansas City. And that's so all the negative stuff recedes to the background. But I mean the Carolina game, I believe that was the AJ passing game.
Is that the game? Because that was before the Pittsburgh game. The Pittsburgh game, they came out and threw it like crazy.
Yeah, passing, where everybody AJ got picked on, but Devontae said it, Lane said it, Jordan said it, Jalen said it.
Let me see if it was the Panthers game. It was the Panthers game. Yep, they won that game 22-16. Jalen had 108 yards passing in that game.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, as we talk about this, did you hear Malik Neighbors on that podcast talking about receivers being divas?
I did not.
You would like that because that was a logical explanation of why receivers are divas and why they don't give a shit about being divas. He's like, we grind all week at practice. All right, we read every route a cornerback makes, and then there's 6 to 8 moments average that we get where we can get the ball per week, and that's how we get paid. That's how we get contracts. That's how we feed our family. That's how we have success in this sport. And if I get open and I'm not getting the ball, you're damn right I get pissed off about it. I only got so many of these opportunities every week, and I think that makes sense to me. Like these guys are human beings, right?
Well, yeah, I've been saying it. I mean, who wants? I say it all the time. Who wants a receiver that doesn't want the football? I would run away from that guy. Like they're basically the good receivers are the 30-point scorers on an NBA team. Like they want the football. Duh. So there's different levels, obviously. I don't consider HA to be a diva at all. Some people do. Antonio Brown, he's a diva. Terrell Owens, he's a diva.
Here's the quote. Let me read you the quote because I paraphrased it too much. He says, I'm not going to speak on all receivers. And then he says, F it, I'm speaking on all receivers. We all feel the same way. We don't like not getting the ball. These coaches, when you tell a receiver he's going to get about 7 catches a game, we are calculating in our head, that's about 100 yards. I need that to get in the Pro Bowl. I need that to get in the bracket so I can get paid. You told me I was going to get the ball. I'm getting open and I'm not getting the pill. We've got a problem. Yeah, receivers definitely are divas. We ain't playing about getting the ball.
Yeah, every good receiver wants the football. Said that for 100 years. I mean, I don't. If you're interviewing somebody in the draft, a receiver, and he said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to block," you don't want that guy. You want the guy who wants the football, and all good receivers want the football. And that's. It's very hard to, the Eagles won basically, every game last year after the bye week, 16 of 17, and they should have won the other one. So that's pretty good. Nobody wants to be the guy that complains when you're winning every game. But when the minute it goes negative and you start losing a game or two, Yeah, it can get ugly quickly. So, can you continue at a pace of winning 16 of 17 games every year? I don't think that's sustainable. So, there were 6 games last year, and 8 if you want to include the playoffs, where Hurts was under 200 yards passing in the modern NFL. 8 games. Now, you don't want him to be over 300 or, even 280, because that means you're behind. That means you're trying to, but you
Yeah,
want to be
right.
in that 220, 230 range, I would say, with a run centric offense. And those are the most, look at the most efficient games. I just pulled it up. So the Super Bowl, 221, where he left early. Washington, 246. Obviously, Kenny finished up in that game. The win over Washington in the regular season, 221. Jacksonville, 230. Dallas, 202. Cincinnati, 236, which was a good game. And then the outliers on the positive side, Green Bay shootout opener, 278, 311, New Orleans. A lot of that was the big play to Dallas Goedert late. I think that was his only 300-yard game, by the way. 264 Cleveland, 290 Pittsburgh, and maybe his best game in the regular season. And then, you had 158 against Tampa. Now, they didn't have AJ, Devontae, so who cares about that game? He had 114 against the Giants. A win because the Giants are the Giants, but that's not acceptable in any case. 179 against the Rams, 118. He had a 3-week stretch, 179, 118, and 108. And that was when the frustration came out.
Right.
After that Carolina game, which was 108. And then they had the big game in Pittsburgh. And then even people forget because, again, you win the games. Green Bay, it was 131 in the playoffs. And the Rams, it was 128, but I remember distinctly it was 65 net because of all the sacks. That ain't typically good enough in the NFL. But you had a spectacular team that could win in other ways because of the rushing game and the number one ranked defense. So they proved they could win that way. And but that doesn't mean you want to evolve. You don't want to
Yeah, you don't
evolve the
want to evolve.
passing.
Yeah, I agree completely. Now, how much do you think they will evolve? Because I would also point to, how are Devontae and AJ going to feel if we have the same type of season this year? And it wouldn't
Exactly
surprise
like
me. And by the
Malik.
way, I said this yesterday because people will say it's on AJ and Devontae and they should shut up. I could argue if you had any 2 other star receivers in this team, it would have been a way bigger problem last year than those 2 made it be. They actually did a pretty damn good job at not making it a problem, I thought. I mean, receivers want the ball. That's what they want. They kind of put the team first in a pretty large part of the season last year, I thought. Thought they could have been a lot worse about it.
Well, again, they're winning. So, when you're winning, unless you're a high level diva, well, that's what I'll call the Antonio Browns and the TOs of the world.
Yeah, they care, but John, what do they care more about? Well, let me ask you this question. What do you
No,
think?
what I'm saying is, unless you're high level diva, you're not going to complain when you're winning. That's what I'm saying. This
is my question. What does, in general, football players, do they care more about their team winning or do they care more about their personal contract and getting paid and those things?
Yeah, well, they want to get paid first.
Yeah. I mean, people care about themselves. Like, you can't criticize them for that. They got to take care of themselves first. The team success is great. You're right. It covers a lot of things. But at the end of the day, these are grown men that are working a job.
Well, yeah. Well, my point, they wanted to complain, but they couldn't complain. Basically, I mean,
I don't know. I think
they did the best
I
they
think if that
could.
happens again this year, I think AJ is going to make a bigger stink about it.
Well, it depends. Are they winning or not? And by winning, I mean you have to win 16 of 17. I'm not saying 10-4 or, through 14 games. I'm not saying 11-6 where you're still winning games. I'm saying you have to win every week and nobody's going to complain to a high level. You hear the occasional passing criticism when somebody, asked them after the Carolina game. That's as bad as it's going to get. If you start losing games, and I don't mean 3-14, I just mean lower than your expectations, and the expectations are incredibly high, obviously, with the Eagles now, then you're going to see it bubble up. And if they're not getting now, what also helps is they're already getting paid. That helps. They already signed their big contracts.
Yeah, they did.
Like if they were on their rookie deals,
big issue. Yeah.
Big issue.
But the
As
other thing
Malik
that does
Neighbors
come
was
into it is there's a human element too, where like AJ thinks about what he's going to accomplish as a player in the league, how people are going to talk to him. Did he make the Pro Bowl last year, or no? Right?
I don't know if he made the Pro. He was second team All Pro again, which is more important.
Which is more important for sure. Did he not make the Pro Bowl? Yeah, I mean Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin. People don't care about that stuff, but that stuff does add up. Like and players do care about what they're able to do in the course of their career. Look at how you talk about any player that's a former player now. You bring up their stats, you bring up their accolades, you bring up what they accomplished. I think there's a human element here that fans leave out. Like, oh, well, they got paid. Yeah, they got paid, but there is more to it than that too.
Yeah, I mean, when you start talking about legacy and potential Hall of Fame players, that's what they get judged on. How many All Pro teams? How many all did they make the All Decade team? How many Pro Bowls? That's what they get judged on. So yeah, it's an important part of it. But how many players reach that level? AJ's at that level. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Still young. Still got to do it for a number of years.
I think AJ's a Hall of Fame talent. That's why I say this. I'm not saying this because I want to criticize the Patrick. People get so mad you bringing this up. AJ Brown is a.
I told you that's what I tell you. They get so mad. He's
good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. If he
Yeah.
doesn't feel like his talent is being used, that is natural for him to sit on the bench and be upset about it, or in the locker room after and say, "I should be used more. I could go to the Hall of Fame. I'm that good." He is that good. Use him. And I wouldn't surprise me if he gets more upset this year.
Well, again, I think that depends on where the Eagles are. He's not going to complain at a high level if they're winning football games. He's not necessarily going to be happy. And he wants the football like any high level receiver. But for the most part, he's going to stay quiet as long as they win. And that's why it would have been an interesting experiment if the Rams upset them, because the whole city would have been on fire. And all anybody would be talking about is the lack of effectiveness of the passing game. And how could the passing game with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, et cetera, be this poor? That's all anybody would be talking about. And now they don't want to talk about it at all. It's bizarre to me. But yeah, when you have the group of receivers that the Eagles do, and you're as inconsistent as they were, not to mention I haven't brought up the offensive line. You have the best offensive line. You have the best running back. You have that group of receivers, and you're that inconsistent passing the football. In a lot of ways, I mean, Kellen Moore is the perfect example of this versus Brian Johnson. Take the players out of it. It is astonishing to me that, like, Kellen Moore wouldn't have been on anybody's list if the Eagles lose that game to the Rams. probably wouldn't even gotten it. You never say never, because he had gotten interviews before in Dallas, and he was already a high profile name, but I don't think he would have been a hot candidate at all because of the way the Eagles offense performed in the regular season. I mean, at all. But they won the Super Bowl and everything. And meanwhile, Brian Johnson is shit canned, and they had a much better passing offense in 2023. Much better. But they didn't win because their defense was shitty. The running game was good, not to the historic level. But the defense was god awful. And they had the collapse, and that's, somebody's got to pay for it. And, Brian's one of the guys who had to pay for it. But that's how quickly things can turn in the NFL. I mean, he would have been a head coach with that same passing offense, with that defense that Vic Fangio, Brian Johnson would be a head coach in the NFL. If he had Vic Fangio's defense in 2023.
I agree.
So, I mean,
winning really does cure all, though, because I have a hard time believing how any rational person, forget being a fan, any rational person would say you have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, and you have Jalen Hurts, all of who are top paid in their league, in their category, in their position group, and are top players in the NFL, and you're bottom 5 in passing. Like, that just doesn't make sense. That I don't get how people wouldn't look at that and say, oh yeah, and we want more out of that. That's certainly how I think the Eagles are looking at it. But again, we're getting grilled over here in the chat because everybody's all mad. Like, I don't understand.
I'm surprised. Like, you were pushing back on me. I've been getting this for. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody, but they think you're disrespectful. I love that word. They think you're. All the Eagles are going to do in the offseason when these OTAs start up on field, and all you're going to be hear about from the people that are there about passing game, evolve the passing game, get better, get more efficient in the passing game, blah, blah, blah. Same thing happened last year. That's all you talked about when Kellen Moore's going to scheme up this, and Kellen Moore's going to do this, and motion. No, nobody gives a shit about motion. They had no inventiveness or creativity in their offense whatsoever last year. The same as the year prior. But they were really effective because they had a really good offensive line and they could block people. And they have really good players that could get open on their own. They didn't do any jack shit of what anybody wanted. And nobody cares because they won. And there's nothing wrong with being simple. If you're as effective as the Eagles, nothing wrong with. In fact, I would encourage it. If you're winning that way, less opportunity for mistakes, and you saw the ball security, it just makes sense. But every team doesn't have the number 1 ranked defense that's not allowing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to get past the 50-yard line for 9 consecutive drives. That's quite the luxury.
All right, so what do you think it looks like this year? You think it looks different than it did last year? You think it's more balanced? What's your expectation for the offense this year? I understand you said they think they're going to run. They are. They got Saquon Barkley in the best O-line in football still.
They're going to scale
does it shift at all, in your opinion, this year?
They're going to try to shift it, but they're going to spend the entire offseason, the OTAs and training camp, trying to get the passing game more efficient. And then when week 1 arrives, they will do whatever they have to do to win a football game. In my estimation, a lot of it depends on the defense. Where's the defense?
Yeah, right.
Like, if you have to throw the ball, you have to throw the ball. So to me, it's not about numbers. It's about effectiveness. But, by general, it's like, all right, one of the best quotes I ever heard from a scout, he was talking about former Eagles linebacker, still in the league, by the way, Eric Wilson, who had a big season coming off from a statistical standpoint. He had a big season on a bad defense, bunch of interceptions for a linebacker. And he called him, the exact terminology was 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. Somebody's got to score on a bad NBA team, even the worst ones. So to me, it's not about volume. If you're losing games and you have to pass the ball because you're losing, you're going to have more yardage, more touchdowns, probably have more interceptions too. So it's not about volume. It's about these low water marks, the 65 net yards passing, the
Right.
Carolina. It's about these that are just unacceptable.
Now, the one thing I will say that the Eagles do deserve credit for is that there weren't many instances, like you pointed out, the games that are too low, and I agree with you, they're too low, but they didn't need to pass in those games, right? The running game was successful, and they rode that, and they won.
Well, I mean,
There were certain games, though, John, where they needed to pass the ball. The Pittsburgh game, I think Saquon had 65 yards. The Super Bowl, Saquon had 50-something yards. And they answered the bell. Jalen Hurts had his best game of the season passing the ball, I thought, in the Super Bowl and versus Pittsburgh. He had 290, I think, versus Pittsburgh, and obviously he did what he did in the Super Bowl. So when you did need it, it was there. And I think that is a feather in their cap, and they should be able to rely on that. My question would be, if it's needed on a more consistent basis, do you feel as though they'll be able to answer that call? I think they will, but I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I can't say that with 100%. I mean, again, if you're talking about the 20th ranked defense or even the 15th ranked defense versus the first ranked defense, you're going to have more opportunities to shit the bed if you're not effective in the passing game. Can they elevate it? Yes, if they play like they played against Pittsburgh, to your point, of course, But that's the outlier. Like, that's literally his best game of the season, I think, by a pretty significant margin.
He was excellent. He was really good in that game. Hip Hop says, what's more consistent than winning a Super Bowl, Xander? Hip Hop, I'm more talking about if teams come in and game plan more for Saquon Barkley because they have more on tape. Spags did take him away in the final game. Like, if they come in and they stack the box and say, beat me through the air, can you do it week in and week out? That's the question. I don't think I'm being unfair, Hip Hop.
Look, I say it all the time with quarterback evaluation. The Super Bowl breaks people. It breaks people. They lose all objectivity. Oh, well, they won the Super Bowl. So you can't say anything, period. Well, they won the Super Bowl. Well, that's not how the Eagles approach it. And if they did, you wouldn't be very happy because they know they can't stand still. They know they need to increase. They went into last season. I think everybody can acknowledge at least that they went into last season trying to improve the passing game. That's why they fired Brian Johnson and Alex Tanney. And that's why they hired Kellen Moore. And all anybody talked about in the offseason with me was, well, what do you see? What do you see Kellen Moore scheme this up? What do you see this? What do you see?
I was one of them. Remember, we used to fight about motion and all the things Kellen
All
Moore.
the
No,
we don't fight about they didn't they ran more motion because it was tough to not run more motion, but they certainly weren't the LA Rams, because they scaled back. They tried to be early. They were trying, and it didn't work. And they scaled back. The story has been told 100 times. They were 2-2. And by the way, I thought it was unfair coming off the Tampa Bay game, which is their worst game, but it was their worst game because they didn't have A.J. Brown. They didn't have Devontae Smith. They didn't have Lane Johnson.
That game was crazy. In hindsight,
it was about 1,000,000 degrees. They weren't prepared to play in that weather. It was just awful. It was an awful performance, awful game, but it was also understandable because of the circumstances. And I thought at the time, I thought the Eagles panicked by saying, all right, this isn't working. We got to completely scale back and turn into what they now in hindsight, they were right because they lost one game and they shouldn't even lost that game by scaling back and just playing conservatively and running the football and riding Saquon Barkley.
Man, the more we talk about this, the more I think about Brian Johnson being completely and utterly scapegoated from this football team. Do you think Brian Johnson was a better offensive coordinator than Kellen Moore here? Now, again, the success thing comes in, right? Everyone's going to say, "Oh, we won the Super Bowl with Kellen." So, but Brian Johnson didn't have Saquon Barkley.
I do.
You think Brian Johnson was better?
I do. For that
I think
reason.
they were pretty comparable.
For that reason. Well, they're pretty comparable statistically. 8th and 8th overall.
I mean, Kellen, a lot of people already no, hell no.
Well, exactly.
Kellen did get Saquon Barkley, and he didn't really evolve the offense.
And number one defense. Brian didn't have Saquon Barkley, and he had the 31st ranked passing defense. I mean, guys, open your minds.
I had no problem with Brian Johnson. I like Brian Johnson, but I don't know if he's better than Kellen. I just posed the question to you because I think it's an interesting.
I think Kellen himself was disappointed. It's very hard for people. Like I always say, Jim Schwartz, who I love and I think is one of the greatest and has taught me more about defensive football than I think anybody on the planet. Even, hopefully Vic will surpass that, but he's only been here 1 year. Jim Schwartz was not happy after Super Bowl 52. He's not happy to this day.
Yeah.
Because his defense played so poorly
500
on the biggest stage.
Yeah.
I know Kellen Moore was not happy with the way things developed last year. Is he happy about winning the Super? Sure. But they didn't come in with the plan that the plan ended up being. You can go back. You can all pretend you don't remember. But all our shows are archived. You can go back to anywhere you want to read, Philadelphia Inquirer, anywhere. Look back to the offseason stuff. Look back to the quotes and what people are talking about and talking about the evolution of the passing game. And we need to do this and all the discussions we had here about all the motion and this and this and this is going to happen. And none of it happened. It was the exact same offense. So even scale back to be more conservative because of the success of Saquon Barkley. Even more, I used to laugh at people that Saquon's going to be the slot receiver. They're going to put him out in the slot. They're going to put him out wide. They're going to do this.
It was one of our first debates ever when I started doing the show. Was Saquon Barkley in the passing game? I'm saying Saquon's going to catch balls out of the backfield. You were ripping me, and you were right, obviously.
All forgotten because winning cures winning a Super Bowl.
All right, so let's move ahead to 2025 season. Is Kevin Patulo equipped to handle this Lamborghini that he has taken over? All right, this is a rookie. This is a rookie offensive coordinator. And John, this isn't a Lamborghini. This is an F1 car. John, is he equipped to drive it?
Well, he's equipped. The question is, like I said, if it were up to Nick, he would have been the offensive coordinator after Shane left. I firmly believe that the first time they were concerned, and they were going to lose Brian Johnson to another job elsewhere if they didn't promote him. So that was part of the reason. And then, Jeffrey pretty much insisted they had to go outside the organization after the scapegoating of 2023. So he's more comfortable. Nick's more comfortable with Kevin than anybody else. I don't think he's overmatched for the job by any instance. And, I think it'll look very similar to what it did last year and the year prior and the year prior to that, because the offense is built around the quarterback. And that's why it looks so similar each year. Not talking about success, talking about how they play.
Right.
So it's going to look similar. And there's nothing wrong with that because they've been tremendously successful. But yeah, and they want to evolve the passing game. And if you're asking me, will they be better than the 29th ranked passing? Yes. But why will they be better? That's the question. Or will they just be better because they got better or because the defense is worse and they have to throw the football more and there's a higher volume? My guess is the main reason they will be much higher is because the defense will not be as good and they will have to throw the ball more. The question is how much of that is effective versus how much of that is just chasing the dragon of trying to get back in football games.
Right. Who's going to be the face of the offense this year?
Saquon.
I agree. All right, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Good offensive segment. We're gonna have Devin Jackson. All right, so we'll get off this topic. I know a lot of people don't like this topic, John, but it does get the people talking. Anwan checks in. What's up, brother? This offense going to be a copy and paste of last year with a few twinks. I like that word, a few twinks.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a copy and paste since 2021. Right. I've always said, we got 4 seasons of Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. If I were the rate, and I've already done this, so I'll do it again. 2022 was his best season. 2023 this is personal, was his second best season. Last year was his third best season. His first season as a starter was number 4. That upsets people. I don't know why, but that upsets people.
Amon, thanks for the super chat, bro. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. All right. Plenty of stuff to talk about here. For the people who struggle with or don't like those conversations, we're going to have them here. All right. We got 2-hour show a day all through the offseason. All right. So we're going to be good. We're going to talk about everything here, whether you like it or you don't like it. If you disagree, you're free to leave your comments in the chat below, and I will address some of them. So we appreciate all you guys being here. Hit that like button. Zeal says, Xander, do you know what a twink is? I can't say I do, other than a Twinkie, like the food. Is there something I'm missing here, Real Zeal? You can let me know. But Anwan dropped it in the super chat, which means I'm rating it. All right. So good stuff, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll take our commercial break. We'll be right back in 3 minutes with Devin Jackson coming up next.